Welcome back to Hey Kentucky. Now, last night I got an email from a friend of mine in high school, and he said to me, Matt, I follow what's going on in the news sometimes, but I don't really understand this Trump thing. What are people talking about? So I decided with so much hysteria about Trump, both pro and con, it's important to recognize what is actually happening and what people are actually investigating. So we decided to do a new segment called What is Going On? And we'll start with what this entire thing is about. In 2016, when Trump ran for president, there are allegations that he had ties to Russia during the election. Now, the two people that are involved are Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn. These are the two individuals that are most at issue. Now, with Manafort, there was an allegation that the DNC server, that's where Hillary Clinton's emails were hacked by the Russians, and some people believe Manafort encouraged it and took money. That's not been proven, but that's the allegation. With Michael Flynn, the allegation is that he went to the Russian government, said that he was speaking on behalf of Trump, and sort of alleged that if Trump won, things would be different from Russia. Now, if he did that, that could be a crime because you can't act like you're an officer of the United States unless you are. So, FBI investigator James Comey, who is the head, was investigating these issues. And there was some talk that he was beginning to subpoena and try to find out more. Then, last week, President Trump fired Comey. Now, you have to understand that that firing of Comey has gotten a lot of criticism. People didn't think Trump should have done it, and people thought it was a bad look. But this is key. It actually is not illegal. The FBI director works for the president. He's under Donald Trump, and Trump is allowed to fire him. So he took a lot of criticism, and a lot of people made the point, which I think is probably a valid one, that it doesn't make sense to fire an FBI director while he's doing an investigation of your campaign. But as far as the law, Donald Trump would be allowed to do it. So that's the first part, pre-Trump being president. Now let's fast forward to February 14th. That's Valentine's Day. Trump had a meeting in the Oval Office where he allegedly asked the FBI director, quote, "I hope you can let this go," referring to the Flynn investigation. Now, it's not certain this happened, but there are enough sources saying it that it's generally believed that he did ask Comey that, and Comey wrote a memo where he says this is what he was asked. Now, this gets into some murky area where it's not really clear what can happen. Trump has authority as president to be in charge of the FBI, and that includes looking over investigations. But what if he is the subject of the investigation? That's really hard to say, because it hasn't happened as surprisingly as that is. Now, a lot of people have alleged this could be obstruction of justice. Now, obstruction of justice is essentially this. You can't stop an investigation that's undertaking. And the way that this often is charged is where somebody threatens violence, intimidation, etc. But it's never been applied to a president. Can a president go to an FBI director and say, "Stop investigating my campaign"? We don't really know. Now, in the past, this has never come up because a sitting president has never been charged with a crime. I have to tell you, I was surprised by that. But in the history of the American government, it hasn't happened. Usually, when presidents have done something bad, Congress impeaches. And so the question is, can someone be charged? And that gets me to the real issue here. It's unclear whether or not a president can be charged with a federal crime while in office. So let's assume that he looked at Comey and said, "Stop investigating Flynn." What happens then? And the reality is, we don't know. The only time in American history this has come close to happening was with Richard Nixon. If you remember, Watergate occurred, and Nixon was found to have likely committed some crimes. So the question was, could he be charged? Well, what ended up happening is Nixon resigned before we could find out. Because no president's ever been charged with a crime, Nixon resigned and was pardoned, it never came up. So it is not clear, even if Trump did what was alleged, if it's a crime and if anything can happen. And that's why you hear a lot of people talking about this as a potential constitutional crisis. It's very rare in American government where we don't know what will happen. If you or I commit a crime, we'll get arrested, we'll go to trial, and we'll see what happens. But when the president does it, what happens is not clear. And every time it's almost happened in the past, they've resigned so it wouldn't occur. Now, we don't know, to be clear, whether or not Trump did anything wrong. But what's very important to recognize is this while you're listening. If they're talking about what happened when he was running for office, he can be charged. But if they talk about what happens after he's in office, no one really knows. And that's what makes this whole thing so scary. No matter what comes up with Trump, the next step is unknown by everyone, and it's why this is such a huge issue.